We are back with Marcia Smith, who was shot by her stepfather October 23rd, 1987. Your life changed forever. Your mother was also shot by your stepfather. So what happens next? You're shot, you're in the vehicle, your mother is outside. What happens next?
So I managed to open the car door with my arms basically dangling at the side. And I walked over to where my mother is now lying on the ground. The poor fellow on the inside in the lobby in the Holiday Inn, I screamed at him to call an ambulance. And then I managed to get down on the ground and I put my head on my mom's chest. And being my mom, in the midst of this, she began to stroke my head and she says, you know, it's going to be okay, Marcy. It's going to be okay. And as you can imagine, within minutes, the place is surrounded with police and ambulance. And I told them who it was, and the police took off. And then, you know, the ambulance began to tend to my mother and myself.
So you're taken to hospital. Your mom went to a separate hospital. Was she at the same hospital as you?
Immediately, we both were at the same hospital, and I could hear my mother groaning in the stall next to me. And I did not have any pulse in my left arm, and so I could hear them on the phone trying to find someone to tend to me because there's only one surgeon there. So at that point, we were separated, and I was brought to a hospital downtown Toronto, and my mother was taken into surgery. At
And
that
10
time.
days later, you get the news.
Right. So 10 days later, my father had flown up. He was living in the States at the time, and I heard him, you know, talking to someone that she needed to know. And this was the Sunday evening. He was now returning back home, and he knelt at my bed and he says, "Marcy, I went to see your mom, and she doesn't look too good." And at that point, my heart sank because I had had numerous surgeries to repair my arm, so I was barely awake most of the time. And my family would just tell me she was stable. That's all they kept telling me, she was stable. I would have one of my nurses call over to the hospital where she was, and you know, everyone was trying to protect me. But that night, my dad was very honest and just said she didn't look too good. And the following morning, I was scheduled to have yet another surgery, trying to repair my arm. And they kept delaying it and delaying it and delaying it. And finally, the psychologist came in, two of them, and they were very sad. And I said, "What's wrong?" And they said, "Marcy, we've been trying to find your family, but we want to let you know that your mom passed away today." And
This is the woman that, again, you two have been together for so long, gone through so much. What was going through your mind at that point?
to be honest, I froze.
Yeah.
And I begged them to take me to surgery. I just wanted to go to sleep, wanted to pretend I did not hear that news. I gave them some numbers and they called my family, and within minutes, you know, everyone had come. But I wanted to go to sleep. That was the hardest thing. I could not imagine not having my mom there.
Yeah.
But they refused to do the surgery that day, and rightly so. I was not in a place emotionally to do that. And I had a nurse's aide came. I don't know her name to this day, but she sat in my room, just sat there, which is all I needed.
Yeah.
And I just became very still until my family arrived. And so, very difficult day.
You essentially planned your mother's funeral from your hospital bed and was on a day pass to go to your mother's funeral.
Yes. And so that was very difficult, as you can imagine, you know, just working with my family to organize that. And then I had two friends came and they took me to the service. And I spent the day with my family and then was brought back to the hospital.
And through all of this, as you're going through surgeries, you have, you know, scars. Your arms are obviously working very fine.
Yes.
You also are going through a process in your mind about this man that took your mother's life and has injured you. When did faith start playing a role in this? Because you made a hard decision.
Well, I was in a Catholic hospital in a room by myself, and there is Jesus on the cross, just right across from my bed. And you know, you start talking, bartering with God, and how did this happen? Why did this happen? And you can imagine, I'm lying in bed, I have one free limb, and that's my right leg. Both arms are in a cast. My right leg is bandaged from my ankle to my hip because they had removed the vein there to, you know, fix my arm. And so I had to call the nurses with my teeth, you know, pinned to the call bed. And so while I'm in the state, I was there alone that day. Someone came to the room and they called my name. Not unusual. It's a teaching hospital, so there's always, residents who are coming in. But this person, they just came, and I saw the feet, and then they left. And I turned my head around. And when I did that, I had this overwhelming sense I had forgiven my stepfather. Now, I found out days later that he had put the gun to his head, and he killed himself the same day. But I realized I had forgiven him. And then I began this whole process. You don't forgive someone who has done this. This doesn't make any sense. How can I forgive him? And it so alarmed me that I didn't tell anyone that I was experiencing this. And I kept, just talking to Jesus on the cross. And I do believe that that whole experience was the prayers of my family, especially my grandmother. She's what you would call a prayer warrior. And she knew how to pray, but I just had this sense I had forgiven him. And with that came a peace. And it wasn't until months later, and because I only went to church, I started going to church with my family because I could not bear to be home alone. And they were all picking up Sunday morning, and I went along. And I was a terrible visitor because I sat at the back of the church and I complained about everything. But slowly, the love of the people and the presence of God, just ministered to my heart. And in that process, I gave my heart to God. And it was only then that I realized that it was God who enabled me to forgive him. And it was only then, months later, I was able to share that with people, that I had this experience.
And Marcia, I think everybody watching is going to say, I would not blame you if you wanted to not forgive this man.
And
he
rightly
took your mother, he has injured you, but why forgive?
Well, now that I understand the power of forgiveness, I say it was essential for me to forgive. If not, I believe I would be filled with bitterness, resentment, no peace, no joy. I would not be free. And what he did would have, carried and hurt me the rest of my life. But by God's grace and his goodness and his love, he gave me this beautiful gift of forgiveness. And I am so grateful for God for that because, this went on the news for quite a bit, and I'd bump into people that either knew my mother or myself. And they would approach me cautiously, thinking I was suffering. And yes, it was difficult to lose my mom. I don't want to minimize that. But in that place, I would meet them with a big smile. And they would be taken back. I would just see their reaction. They did not expect that. But that's what God did for me, and I believe that he can do that for everyone.
You talk about your scars and describe that. We only have seconds left. How you see your scars today.
Well, the scars are there. They're all over both arms and my leg. But, the scars are there, and now 30 years later, the scars no longer hurt. And what God did, not only did he give me that beautiful gift to forgive my stepfather, he healed that wound. And so whenever I can look at the scars, I remember the event, but that angst, that hurt is no longer there. And so God indeed healed the memory, the hurt that's in the memory. And I could tell the story and tell the story time and time again, but that deep hurt is not there.
Wow.
And so that's the goodness of God.
Thank you, Marcia. Wow. Amazing, hopeful stories here on 100 Huntley Street. That's what I love to remind you. Marcia's story could be a story that you'd see on any other TV show, but the difference is God. The difference is that she has a Heavenly Father that she could turn to and know that she's not by herself. I hope that you know that you're not by yourself. Maybe you also have scars that you're trying to process and you're still feeling the pain from them. Maybe you're still struggling through unforgiveness. I know it's not easy. I will be the first one to say forgiveness is not easy, but we are commanded to do it. God knows that when we release people from our lives, we live more freely and we're able to allow him to work through us because we've released that unforgiveness in our lives. And so would you maybe take that challenge from Marcia today? Maybe release somebody that you've had, that you've been holding on to, you've been just griping and complaining about that person, and just release them to Jesus today. Please do call our prayer lines. They're at the bottom of our screen, 1-866-273-4444. Amazing prayer partners that would love to pray with you, journey with you, agree with you that forgiveness is the right way to go. They'd love to get a Bible into your hands, get you connected to a community of Bible-believing, Jesus-believing people that love you and love him, and just get you straight on that journey. Again, it is not easy. I'm not going to tell you it is. I'm pretty sure Marcia would say that as well. But it is a choice that we can make freely today. Stay with us. We'll be right back.